Alrighty. Oh, good to go? All right. All right. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to this town hall. Just do some brief introductions before we get started. My name is Pierre Sawaya with the city, the Capital Program Manager in Public Works. With me tonight is Evan Lee, our landscape architect with SWA, and also Tom Perez, our city engineer. So today's town hall is discussing the Ocean Avenue and Beach Street improvements. This is stemming from our uh, downtown action plan. The focus of tonight's discussion is along Ocean and Beach between Broadway Street and Ocean Avenue. So the purpose of today's meeting is really a community discussion about the concept of the project. In 2019, the City Council directed staff to pursue improvements to the downtown area called the Downtown Action Plan. And although not formally adopted, City Council did direct staff to create a CIP project for the purpose of introducing improvements to the downtown area. And as mentioned, the focus of this project is along Ocean Avenue, basically from Forest Avenue down to Coast Highway and also portions of Beach Street. So again, we'll be discussing sort of the concept level, a high level view of the project tonight. Moving forward, we would take some of that, input and discussion here tonight and to look into incorporating some of that into our designs, our engineering designs for the project. And moving forward, we'll make sure that if you have any questions or comments on the project, you'll have a source and a contact for expressing those questions or opinions. So currently for this project, we've started on a concept level design that includes survey and utility work along that corridor. The survey work is to really map out what's out there today, including existing sidewalks, curb lines, mapping out the existing trees, etc. Also part of those efforts are locating and confirming the locations of underground utilities, especially drainage facilities, sewer, etc. And the purpose of all that is to create accurate base maps. That will be the basis for the designs of the project moving forward. Also part of our efforts is a tree assessment of all the trees along the Ocean Avenue corridor. We've have an independent third-party arborist that will conduct those visual inspections of the trees, approximately 79 trees along that corridor. And it would look at the trees, the conditions of the trees as they stand today, and also looking at what potential impacts could be created by the project. So at a high level, some of the proposed improvements as part of the project would be to replace the sidewalks along Ocean Avenue and Beach Streets. As shown out there today, the sidewalks are in varying conditions, kind of a hodgepodge of different patterns and materials out there. The intent would be to replace those sidewalks with new 2-foot by 2-foot joint panels. And a picture of that is shown on the left, which is pretty consistent for much of the sidewalks along that corridor, although not all of them as they stand today. Part of the improvements would also include widening the sidewalk along Beach Street. This would be I'll call it the inland side of Beach Street between Ocean Avenue and Broadway. The project would also look at tree pit improvements that could include grates around the trees. It could include DG around the tree wells. We'll get a little bit more into that in a few minutes. And lastly, the project will look at street and drainage improvements that could include curb bump outs for additional safety measures, landscaping, and also improve drainage in areas that require it. So moving forward, after tonight's discussion, work will continue on the project in designing and refining those designs, especially for Ocean Avenue. Additionally, a one-way study was performed by the city consultant for the portion of Lower Ocean Avenue, and that's between Beach Street and South Coast Highway. That was a traffic study performed by KOA, and that item will be presented to City Council on November 18th here in a couple weeks for consideration and review. And at that meeting, city staff will be looking to receive direction from City Council regarding the design of Lower Ocean Avenue, or whether that would be to pursue a one-way street or to have it maintained as a two-way street as it stands today. Also, looking to the future, the project will ultimately go to Planning Commission design review. That would follow the final engineering of the project. So that will go to Planning Commission for additional consideration, input from the public, and approval in the avenue of a public hearing. Moving forward, we want to make sure that we maintain outreach with the public. You can email your questions or comments to Alpha Santos, our project manager for the project. Unfortunately, she is out sick today, but she is the PM for the project, and her email address is listed here on this slide. So moving forward, I'm going to pass it to Evan here to discuss into a little bit more detail about some of the design elements of the project. And let me see if I can scroll over to that presentation and bring that up. You can slide it over if you want to.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Welcome, everybody. So I work with SWA Group. We're a local landscape architecture urban design firm, and we've been, coordinating with the city on this for a little while, and I'm really excited about the opportunities of this space. This is one of the three major streets within downtown, and it obviously has its own unique character that's charming, and we want to make sure that that is maintained. So I'm going to walk through some of the high level concepts that we're doing. Again, these are just concepts, just ideas, initial ideas. So kind of a quick overview. And just to reiterate, what we're really trying to do here is maintain the character and have a very tactile approach in what our concepts are. So with Ocean Avenue, we want to make sure that we are still maintaining and enhancing the pedestrian character of the street. And I think you can see that evidently, especially in the upper part of Ocean Avenue. We want to maintain a healthy tree canopy that is able to survive the long term. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen the conditions of the trees down there and their impacts on the sidewalk, causing sidewalks to lift in certain areas. And so we're trying to have a tactile approach based on, some of the old historic trees that have been there, 50 plus years, and some of the newer trees that have been recently implemented. Another goal is we're trying to create a strong sense of identity to Ocean. Just as Forest has its strong identity of this street of eucalyptus, Ocean has that view of the lifeguard tower of Main Beach. So we want to preserve that and enhance that character as much as possible. Another goal is to just beautify the public realm. So especially in Lower Ocean, majority of the street is impacted by surface parking lots. So one of these areas of study is looking at how we can best minimize that and introduce more landscape, more planting, more opportunities for art within this space. And lastly, is we want to preserve or include or provide more parking to this area. So our major strategies that we're talking about are bump outs, and I'm sure that you've seen going through downtown that there are parking meters that are capped off with a red cover, and these are basically to enhance pedestrian safety at crosswalks. You can see them all throughout downtown, and they're usually on the incoming side of crosswalks. So these are opportunities for us that we can enhance with planting, art, a meeting spot. So and these areas are part of this Assembly Bill for California that is a daylighting law. So they have to be restricted from parking. So there's opportunity for us there. We want to increase the safety for our crosswalks and just make them more identifiable. There are various conditions in Ocean. Some of them um, are pavers, some of them are just asphalt. So we're looking to maintain that and create that character. As previously mentioned, we're looking to minimize the impacts of surface parking lots by screening parking, low, about 3 feet tall opportunities for hedges or vine walls. And we're also looking to treat the tree wells and in its various conditions. And obviously each tree is its own study. So we have kind of a breakdown of that. So kind of moving through this, the pink areas that you see outlined in this diagram might be a little hard to read, but the pink areas are opportunities to basically extend the curb line. And again, this was done at a conceptual level. I'm sure we'll have to revisit this once the engineering is done for drainage flows. But these pink areas are essentially areas that are either red striped from the street or are undesignated, essentially, or part of that Assembly Bill daylighting law that I mentioned earlier. So we're looking basically at using these areas, and again, all of them are in pink, to either extend out the sidewalk or create planting opportunities. Some of them with trees, some of them without trees. This doesn't impact parking. And again, we're only looking to capture areas that are underutilized. The only area that we're currently considering, and again considering, is an Upper Ocean, and that's just to have a mid-block crossing. This is almost near the bus station, kind of. You can see the cursor, but in this location here. So that's the only on-street parking that we're considering potentially removing, but that's just to maintain that same condition that's on Lower Ocean. So as Pierre mentioned, we're looking at basically simplifying the paving out there. And again, there are multiple conditions. There are some areas that are lifting. There are some areas that are damaged. So we're looking to have a kind of unified approach to this, and we're considering, part of what's already out there is a 2x2 grid, saw cut grid. This isn't a tool joint that you see out there. It's a saw cut, so it's nice, clean lines, and we're looking to add brick pavers to the crosswalks as previously mentioned. So this diagram shows, again, maybe a little hard to read, but essentially we have opportunities to have either a hedge or a railing, and a vertical railing that vines can grow on. And this is really just to impact the presence of vehicles on Ocean. And you can see from this diagram that most of that occurs on Lower Ocean. So that's just an opportunity to kind of keep the streets their own character, and the parking lots kind of a separate from visual impact. On our initial assessment, and again, as Pierre mentioned, we're waiting on a full arborist report, but there are a variety of tree conditions on Ocean. So this is coming from the perspective of a landscape architect, and again, we need to rely on an arborist to understand the tree health. But basically, the trees in green are areas of normal health, normal condition. There's no heaving, and these tend to be trees that were recently implemented or trees that have a pretty wide planting area. But the purple indications are trees that have either root transition onto curb, sidewalk, or have heaving of the sidewalk. So these are special conditions. And again, we're not looking to remove any of these, but we're looking to treat these differently because they are a different condition. And then the yellow is signs of either poor health or stress. So these are trees that are either in their last stages of life or have been damaged through a variety of means. So again, once we get the arborist report, we can update this graphic on our end and approach this potentially in a different way. So as mentioned, we're looking at tree wells is a big part of this study. So we kind of have two approaches right now. One is the application of a tree grate, and the tree grate would work in a condition where it's either an existing tree that has a small trunk, a tree caliper, or new trees. And over time, these tree grates will basically have their rings cut out of them, so that way the tree can grow and the tree grate stays in place. And we're looking to maintain the motif that we're hoping to integrate on forest. The other approach, which is for actually majority of the trees, especially the ficus on lower ocean, is the application of a decomposed granite. So currently out there, you'll notice that a lot of it is this mulch material that is can get kicked up and often has pretty high contrast from a visual standpoint, from the gray to the kind of the dark mulch color. So decomposed granite is a material that we're quite familiar with and we've used in other cities. This over time, we're not looking to stabilize this because we're looking for drainage for these trees, but over time, the DEG settles in place and can be easily swept up in the first couple months if any overspill were to happen. But the DEG allows us flexibility that a tree grate doesn't, because the tree grate has to have even conditions on all sides, including the curb. The DEG, most predominantly actually seen in Dana Point, is a solution that we know is more flexible and can work with the bigger trees down in the lower ocean. So kind of mapping that out, and again, this kind of aligns with the tree diagram shown earlier that basically the trees that were in purple now have a DG tree well. And trees that are either show signs of stress or are new or have this tree grate approach. And, you know, I think one can work without the other. So these could all potentially be the DG approach, but I know we're trying to maintain a certain character here. But right now, we're kind of having this kind of mixed idea, which is eclectic. It's part of the character of Laguna, regardless. Okay, so lastly, I know this was a study that was done, or at least an idea that was considered a few years ago, but the idea of having lower ocean a one-way. So in our study, we're looking to basically take on the character of upper ocean and continue that angled parking kind of on the northwestern side of the road and continue that through. So if you actually stand on ocean, you can see that when it hits beach, the center line of the road jogs a little bit. So this solution actually kind of simplifies that shape. The street aligns now, but it also allows us to have an additional 8 parking spaces along lower ocean while bringing down the presence of vehicles on both sides. So again, lower ocean one way is parallel, which is currently what's existing on the, let's kind of page south here, and then the angled on the one side. So this allows us to have these green areas for new trees, kind of bring that in, or new planting opportunities, or potentially even public art opportunities where these areas can be infilled with sculpture and that can be going through the Arts Commission. So in terms of what we're looking at for trees, again, this is kind of our first approach here. We're looking to largely move away. You'll see that most of the big trees, especially on lower ocean, are ficus trees, and ficus trees are problematic. I mean, you can see them in a lot of our local cities where over time they grow in and cause a lot of damage with their higher roots. So we're looking to basically either take on the characteristic of forest, which is like this eucalyptus grove. Potential alternatives that would also work are the Gygera parvifolia, the Australian willow, and the Acacia cinephylla, which is the shoestring acacia. Both of them have a similar look to the eucalyptus. They're all drought tolerant, and they all have evergreen foliage, which is critical, so we don't have leaf litter on the ground. Potentially, again, this goes back to kind of the extension of ocean is perhaps relocating some Mexican fan palms just on the coast highway side, because the coast highway side seems to be problematic in terms of tree longevity in that area. So we're considering that. For understory plants, I'll just keep this brief. It essentially aligns with the characteristics that you see throughout downtown and throughout the residential neighborhoods, which is, various sorts of agave, drought tolerant, Dianella, that sort of thing. We're also looking at introducing more color and material that we know is bulletproof, we know that doesn't is more hardy and won't die off over time, that requires constant replacement. So with that, I'll pass it back to Pierre.
Thank you, Evan. So that concludes our slideshow portion of tonight's town hall. And as I mentioned earlier, I think the community engagement is a huge part of tonight's efforts. So with that being said, we will do a Q&A. Christian, he's also with the city, one of our project managers. He'll be assisting with walking the microphone around, and we'll be happy to take those questions and hopefully provide you some answers.
So on Beach Street, the street widening, so you're talking about widening it on the barbershop side, not the bank side, correct? Inland side.
Yeah, we're looking to, and thank you for mentioning that. Basically, on the side of Rasta Taco and that side is the sidewalk gets very narrow there, and one of the ficus trees, especially along the wash there, the creek, causes the sidewalk to narrow quite a bit. And there are opportunities to basically align the part of Beach Street that's closer to Forest straight, while that lane is extra wide. So there's a parallel condition, a drive lane, and then there's a big buffer area. So we're basically just looking to expand that out while maintaining parallel and the drive lane through.
Yeah, I was looking at this section between Ocean and Forest, and the bank side has 4 ficus, big ones that are beautiful, healthy ones. That the trunks, because those sidewalks are narrower than they are, say, on Forest, the trunks are right at the curb. And so I was thinking that maybe you were going to widen that part of the sidewalk so that those 4 trees would have more root space. But that's not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in. The limits for this project on Beach are only between Forest and, Ocean and Broadway. So we would not be doing
Oh,
that
okay.
piece.
So it's not the block. It's not the block. I thought you're going to Forest Avenue.
No, it's looking at the area between the Ocean and Broadway.
Oh, okay. So that changes things. Okay. Thank you.
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay. It's okay. I have a voice.
No, it should be good.
Okay.
Yeah, let me.
First of all, thank you. This is so thoughtful. We have a store at 311 Ocean, Good Together House. And so anytime we hear an improvement, we are so thankful. And what you've already thought of is obviously going to be helpful and to beautify it. So thank you. When the report came out today, it said on the project schedule, it says Q4 2026 begin construction. As a retail store, Q4 is how we keep in business, how we stay in business. So if we could, it is what we wait for all year. So if we could bump that, and probably not summer, that would be a mess for you guys, but toward Q1, that would be fantastic. And then that is the reason we came today. I just have one other comment, and that is I love the fact that you would be getting 8 parking places if you made it one way, but if you've spent time downtown, that means the entrance from Coast Highway is at Park and is at Broadway. Both of those get backed up so badly. I really don't know how you would make that workable. It's problematic.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate those comments. We certainly want to be working with the property and the business owners in that area before we get into construction. So there certainly will be that outreach and discussion and conversation to understand those impacts to the businesses, because we understand it can be impactful. And then also regarding the accesses, yeah, we'll be looking at all that information. Again, the one-way study on Ocean will go to City Council. So for those who do want to provide feedback, that will certainly be welcome on November 18.
Couple things jump out at me. As you're coming down, if the one-way does happen, you have Whole Foods across from B of A. That's a nightmare. And you're going to have all this stuff happening in that corner if the street does back way up. So you're going to have people say, I'm bailing. That's a natural event. Everyone's going to go through that B of A lot. B of A lot has that little mirror. It's not little, that big mirror. And everyone's trying to navigate that. And it's like one of those mountain roads. So you've got during peak summer, that is a huge risk. I don't think B of A is going to accept that risk. They're going to want to push that onto the city. They're not going to want 1,000 cars blowing through there. You have people walking. You got a blind spot on both sides there. That's a huge problem. So that to me seems like a big choke point. And then when you're doing, if I saw some of the bump outs or some of the parking spaces right there by Whole Foods that you're thinking of adding, that people are just going to try to cut through Whole Foods as well. I mean, you have a lot of people walking around, parents with kids, people using that sidewalk, people going to the beach. There's a lot of body movement and cars you're trying to choke down and get them out of there, and they're going to move both ways to get out. So that seems like somebody in traffic flow has really got to look closely at that and say, how do we fix that? Those are the two big ones. And then obviously living here, as you're driving around looking for parking spaces, I'm not sure. I like the screen idea to hide the cars a little bit, but as you're looking for a space, my eyes naturally go down the aisle and I'm like, can I park down there? Yes, no, maybe. If I think I got a shot, I go down there. But if it's screened off, I have no clue. So now you have people jacked up in those places waiting for cars to move in and out. So just some things to think about. That's all.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, to elaborate on that, I've already got my plan going down Ocean, cut through the parking lot and go back down the alley to Beach. So, I mean, that's what everybody's going to be doing. So the alley is going to be clogged. It's going to be tough. I mean, it really is just having it one way. So.
I'm sure that gets like 5-star review. That's a big deal. I want to make sure everyone's got a shot.
I totally agree with everything you're saying. That would be I agree with the stores because we already have vacant store space. So the last thing we should be doing is jeopardizing our small independent stores further. So kudos for coming and talking about that. Couple questions I have. This was reviewed a couple years ago and it was determined that it was not feasible. So I'd like to know what changed. And I don't know of anything that's changed. I've lived here for 40 plus years and that street hasn't changed. But what's changed that we're revisiting this again and spending time on it? There's got to be something. That's question number one. Question number two, maybe I missed it, but if we realign the parking on Lower Ocean, what's the net effect to parking spaces? Is it an equal, decrease, increase?
There would be an increase, as Evan mentioned. So to question number 2, if we were to do the one-way on Lower Ocean Avenue, that would result in a net positive change of 8 parking stalls along that stretch.
All right. Then, and my third question is increase in the size or the width of the parking of the sidewalks. What was the determining factor that the sidewalk width needed to be increased, and how was it determined how much it needed to be increased?
I can elaborate that. So the only area where we're really looking to widen the sidewalk is along Beach. And the driving factor there was the limited space along the Georgiana, if I said it correctly. And then also the large ficus tree that is between Rasta Taco and the channel. So we looked at that specific location, and because the tree is so large, there's really limited access for ADA accessibility through that area. So we looked at that, determined the best way to provide that was to move the curb out and have the sidewalk be between the street and the tree. That is the intent, where the trees are healthy and can remain in place. The intent would be to protect them. And so looking at that area and trying to identify how we can add additional space around the roots to help alleviate the impacts to the tree, and then also the impacts to the sidewalk. But if you look in that specific area, you notice it is much wider. So that's why we saw we can still widen to get that accessible pathway and maintain the on-street parking and the traffic flow. As you approach Broadway, we may need to transition back to the existing to accommodate the right turn lane. Because when you get to Broadway, then you have the left turn and the right turn. So we'll try to maintain some of that so we don't have unintended consequences there. No, the intent is to keep the parking there. Yeah, it would almost, I think a simple way to look at it would be, it almost aligns that curb with the curb on the other side of Ocean. And so you'll still have your on-street parking and a through lane there.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a few questions. I think it might be easiest to start on the furthest away from PCH. So with those bump outs near the bus station, and this isn't, nothing that you guys have done wrong, but I think it's important to think about City Council at the last meeting talked about potentially turning that into the fire station. So that would be kind of silly for the city to spend money on creating all these bump outs and then, not too long later having to build a fire station, and then now you're re-tearing up all that concrete. So probably a good idea to, think about that and make sure that that's all taken into account. With these bump out, is this crosswalk that you're putting right there, were there reasons for adding these things? Like, did someone get hit by a car there? Were they not? Is this just widening sidewalks? That's not really an area where people are hanging out. There's all these random bumps where there's no real explanation of why these bumps are placed there. And maybe that's just something I missed, or if you could provide more context to that. As we get closer towards Beach, thank you for clarifying that it's not taking away the parking spaces. It's obviously going to make it not as wide. And if you've ever driven down there, when your back is to Broadway and you're on Beach and you're facing Ocean, there's almost enough space for a second lane, like a right turn lane. So I don't know if that would be taken away or if that was ever considered to be added, because there's no parking right there, right at the corner. From our perspective, the top left corner, which is the Whole Foods beach side. I don't know if that was even discussed or not, because I think, like me personally, I just pull in there because people are waiting for people on the crosswalk. And that's part of the issue that causes a lot of the traffic is, pedestrians aren't really thinking about traffic flow and they just walk, and people aren't from here. And there's a constant flow of people walking that causes traffic buildup. So I don't know if that was thought of with adding, when you're bumping out a ton of that intersection, if that's going to cause more issues there. And also you have an issue with people that are homeless hanging out there, and some of the benches, which, can be a concern. And you mentioned that corner next to the bank of adding more, as you called it, rightfully a hangout spot. Well, how does that actually get used? So we don't want to be enabling any of that. And then when you go to the lower part of Ocean, as we get towards PCH, all those bump outs, and maybe I missed it, I like the parts around the bank and the Bouchard's parking and the parking next to the Irish bar, what's the purpose of those bump outs? And if, as I think we all are in agreement, it's a terrible idea to make it a one-way. If you've ever gone down there, you'd have to circle all the way around during summer, which I hope KOA's feasibility study is done with summer traffic and not with October traffic, because, you know, that would be a big mistake. Are these bump outs all done with the assumption that it is a one-way? Because it seems like you're taking away a lot of lane space. And also, you know, if you're going to create that massive of a sidewalk there, it would probably be a really good idea to consult, you know, Board and Brew and the radio and the bar there. So, and also, this could be something further down the road if at PCH and Ocean, if it's ever discussed to make it kind of like that, as I call it, the Shibuya crossing style in Japan, which we've done over at Laguna Avenue and at Forest, and how that would potentially factor into that. Because I think a lot of us think that that's a good idea to do that, because in the summertime it's chaotic. You don't want people going in a weird, long, roundabout way. But if all that was considered in that. So sorry for the very long question. But and then the last thing, sorry, the trees. Another thing of siloing stuff. City Council last meeting talked about making sure we have native trees. And then I see palm trees being offered. You know, we're not the spectrum where we need to be a bunch of palm trees that aren't from Laguna. And obviously, I think the current trees aren't even, you know, native. But I didn't see many local trees. You mentioned an Australian tree. So maybe it'd be a good idea to have some options for the City Council that are including big native trees. And obviously, trees screw up sidewalks. It's an unfortunate thing. So, you know, we shouldn't be not considering native trees just because they might damage a sidewalk. It's part of nature, right? But yeah. Sorry about that.
I can go first.
It was a lot there, a lot of I think are great comments. So maybe don't have a response, but we're taking definitely notes on. One thing I will say, you know, I understand the concern near Board and Brew and the radio station. Not too long ago, that area actually went to PTC, and it is what it is today with the bike parking and the loading. So that definitely is something we'll work with them on and make sure we don't want to do something that, like I said before, would have an unintended consequence. So we'll work with them on that. In terms of the bulb outs, the direction we staff provided to SWA was to look at both alternatives, so as to not slow down the process. Look at what could it look like if it was a one-way, and what could it look like if it was remained as a two-way. And really, our goal is then that on November 18th, we can present that to the council and get an understanding and hear probably much of what we're hearing now and give the council the ability to make a decision on that. But we wanted to look at that, you know, there's some history there. There was a plan done on that. You know, I'll probably get the dates wrong, but around 2019, we had a plan that was looking at converting that to a one-way. But then when the promenade was implemented, the Ocean one-way stopped. And so since we had this project coming forward, that's why we thought, well, let's look at it again and then make a decision one way or another and move forward from it.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. I can answer a few of those. So I think one of them was the why are we putting bump outs in, or what's the intent of the bump out locations as they're depicted on this diagram? So to provide some clarity, most of these bump outs are located to bookend links of angled or already parallel parking, and a lot of them align with drive entries to either a parking lot or an alley. So by capturing this kind of these wedges of space, we're allowing opportunities for planting. That way we can minimize seeing a bunch of stacked vehicles. You can kind of start to hide them, and you can also help identify where there's these entries points by creating almost a framing effect of landscape. To your question on Beach and Ocean, the kind of turn there near Whole Foods, that goes along, our intent for that and kind of creating that extension is really just to narrow the crosswalk and put pedestrians out in front and more visible from cars driving through. S- There's no parking there, but it's also just helps, narrow the crosswalk down, and we're doing it on multiple sides here. So we're looking to basically have a more of an approach where we can kind of frame off all ends, really. There's no parking there, but as you note that on Beach, there's already a couple areas where they have the demarcated red caps for parking. So this is just it's seen to help increase pedestrian safety in Downs. There's many cities that were fundamentally built like this, and there's a lot of being retrofitted in this regard. So that's our consideration, but it's just an initial idea for that.
Yeah, I think I heard that same comment more than once. So I am hearing the concern for the cut through, and I could almost picture it in my mind when I heard about if you're coming, say, from Broadway towards Ocean, if you want to make a right turn and there's cars backed up, I could almost picture a guy saying, "Hey, you know what? Let me go through the parking lot." So we'll definitely take a close look at those and make sure we're getting it right. Yeah, I hear that one.
Beach hits Ocean. You've got those bump outs right there. During the summer, you got a ton of bus staging, and you've got the bump out along Beach pushing out. You've got multiple buses there. You've got a bunch of tourists walking around. They don't know where their car or whatever. Can a bus make that turn? That looks like a big bump. It looks like a pinch point. And does that mean this beach coming this way? You're toast, you can't go through anymore, or is there enough room?
Yeah.
Particularly have this really small.
I think from a diagram, yes, but we would make sure that buses can still turn. That wouldn't, yeah.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point because we do have a lot of delivery vehicles through downtown, the trolleys. So I 100% understand that concern because I think looking at the diagram, it looks worse than what it would actually be. But certainly we'll look at that and we use our turning templates and make sure that we're not getting to a point where, say, a delivery truck needs to turn into the oncoming traffic to make a turn or something to that. Yeah.
There's also, you said, you have trees that are, you're gonna, because they're dying and there's some issue where you get down towards coast and they're not making it. Some of the examples you gave, again, are not, maybe whatever. But I also noticed the heights of those, and some of those are 40-foot plus kind of heights. The closer you get to Dove Beach versus Beach Street, you're gonna have a lot of noise coming at you going, "Hey, you're taking away my view of that sand." Is that, the taller those can go or are, the more noise you can hear around that. And I just want to make sure that's being thought of.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the considerations of the palm in general. We know that palms are doing well out there. You can see them along the bluff there. But the issue with native trees in a streetscape is most of them are deciduous. So like the California sycamore, you'll get a lot of leaf litter. And primarily what was out here are oaks. And oaks require a lot of area for them to function. You can see some actually within Irvine that are in a large median, but that's really the only area that I can think of. So we're looking at species that are tolerant. They're not, you can see them all through Southern California. They aren't necessarily, native, but then we're also trying to satisfy other criteria just for ease of maintenance and that sort of thing.
That parking lot behind our store, the trees, I've had whole branches come down my car, like you wash your car one day and then you've got those berries or those fruit that's just stuck to your windshield.
Yeah.
And so, the parking's already an issue and then all that happens. So we want trees, if there's any way that if they do choose new trees, that they're not deciduous, right? That they would.
Right.
Really, people get really upset.
Yeah, most of those droppings are happening from those larger ficus trees. Yeah, and again, I think there probably needs to be discussion of just of maintenance to make sure that those tree canopies are opened up, making sure that they're visible. I think that's a whole other separate discussion, but obviously, yeah, visibility and making sure that people's views aren't blocked at the beach is critical.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for putting this together. And I know it was very much thought through, but I don't think it's necessarily thought through for the way the people in this town live and use their downtown, which I think you're realizing this evening. I came tonight because of my fear and frustration of hearing that that potentially Ocean Avenue will be made one way, because I do live and use my downtown. I go to the grocery store downtown, I go to Wells Fargo, I go to the post office, and I have my entire life. And ever since City Council decided to make Forest Avenue one way, as well as moved the crosswalk to the other side of Ocean, it is now bumper to bumper when you try to leave Ocean and get onto PCH. You cannot make a right turn. You will sit there for multiple lights to try to turn right to go to North Laguna. So I cut through the Wells Fargo parking lot, or I have to make a U-turn and I go down Beach and then I go out on Broadway. This is going to be a nightmare for the people who live here, who want to use their grocery store, who want to go to their bank, who want to support the small businesses in town, who want to go and grab coffee in town. We will leave. We will drive to Dana Point. We will drive to Newport. We will go out the canyon. We will no longer use our downtown. So I came tonight simply for that. I know I will come to the city council meeting in a few weeks, but I feel like the city keeps making decisions to make our life as residents harder to use our town, and continuing to shut off our access to our streets or make things one way. And it seems to be done for purposes that you aren't sharing with us. Like, we don't understand the true purpose behind the decisions that the city is making, because it's not to make our lives easier. And it seems to only be supporting particular people in town, like a particular restaurant on Forest Avenue. So I really hope you hear us tonight and can support us, the locals, in making sure that the city council doesn't choose to make it one way, because it's going to make our life so challenging. It already is with the two decisions they made of closing Forest Avenue and changing the crosswalk on Ocean. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents at this point. Like, I feel like no matter what any of us says tonight, the city council chooses our destiny of this town, and never seems to be in favor for what's right for us as a community. So we hope that you really understand that, and maybe you or anyone on the planning committee can take some time to actually park on Lower Ocean and see what it's like to run errands in town, and how that could be a frustration in the future.
Hi, well, I joined in on the anti-ocean one-way troop. I've had so many comments since the promenade is going to go through, that when you're coming into town, you can't get to the downtown. And that's what you were talking about, that you need a good way to enter the downtown without having to go all the way to Legion or going down the alley by Park. And it's cumbersome, and it's limiting access to our businesses. And if Ocean was one way too, it would be impossible really to get to downtown in a nice way. Then I'm also concerned about the trees. You know, Bob and I worked on the landscape and scenic highways element, and we studied the trees for years, and we made a list of trees for Ocean Avenue. It seemed like now we're starting all over. We had meetings with the Planning Commission about the trees on Ocean Avenue, and we decided that we would replace some of the ficus that had been removed with magnolias, because they had dark green leaves and they had a similar character, but not as aggressively growing. So I don't see using gray-leafed, fine, filmy trees to replace the gutsy trees or to correspond with the gutsy trees that we already have. Seems like should be choosing. The other thing is they chose some Tristanias, which also have dark green leaves. I mean, why are we going with these gray-leafed willow-like trees that really don't do that well anyway and don't add to the character? Thank you.
Okay. Agree with a ton of the comments that were made. In the deck that was posted online, there was some financial considerations not presented here today. And obviously, if we spend money on this, we don't spend money on other things to benefit the residents. Are there funds set aside for this? How much has been spent to date? Can you just touch on maybe some of that was included in the original materials?
Yes, so as I mentioned, the city council did ask us to create a capital improvement project for this specific project. So there are funds allocated for this fiscal year toward the design and the construction of the project. So they are in place.
Is there a back napkin estimate as to what that would cost?
We're not quite there yet, just because we're at the concept level of design. Once we get closer to the final engineering design and have an engineer's estimate, then we'll kind of know more ballpark where we're going to land.
The CIP had $1.5 million allocated for this project. No, that was intended to fund design and construction. Yeah, I would need to verify. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll get that answer. In several cases, I think it would conflict with the bump outs, and that's some of the thought. And there will be a study session for the downtown in general, I believe November 18th. Looking at that, so some of the intent would be to align these bump outs where those decks exist, and try and make it cohesive throughout downtown.
I've been told that the parklets were supposed to be that this coming January, that their whatever contract had run out and that they would be taken out. That said, Odo was just given some. So I'm unsure of that as well. Just for since you guys are looking at this area, just a little bit of info. On Beach right now, there are 6 parking spots designated for trolleys. They're shut down every weekend, and in the summertime, 100% of the time. We have revisited this, so just so you know, those aren't used. At most, 1 trolley is there, never 3, and there's 6 parking places that are taken up. So we look out at this, and considering how difficult parking is downtown, it's a frustration. We are pro trolley, we love them. It's just that when it's just not being used, it's hard.
If I could ask a follow-up, I just want to make sure I heard correctly. Are you seeing that they're not used year-round or outside of summer?
Year-round.
Year-round.
Year-round, there's perhaps one trolley, often none, but 1 at the most. So which says trolleys are doing a great job. They're running on schedule. It's just not needed. Also, in front of that is a red parking place. They could, maybe
Okay.
they could pull forward.
I'll
Also-
look into that.
Also, if you're trying to get 8 spots for the one way, which, obviously would be a nightmare, that could get 6 spots. So you're just too short, So that would be an amazing compromise for us, because just to look at those empty spots, especially in summer, it's hard as a retailer.
You said earlier that you had not consulted the businesses on Ocean that you said you will consult them. I don't know when that's working in the timeline if you're presenting on November 18th. And I think, you could have saved yourself a big headache and have obviously had better ideas before you spent all this time and the city spent all this money on planning everything if you had initially started out by reaching out to the business owners. Because I'm sure if the business owners that are there were aware of these changes, that they would have been able to provide, they would have come here. Now you're essentially saying they had this town hall and they have the city council meeting. And if they're not able to attend on 2 days, that their voices aren't going to be heard. But if you had engaged them more to get feedback, you would have saved yourself a lot more time and effort on, and maybe had better ideas on what you could do for this block. And I think that just goes into a bigger issue, which is not you guys directly, of just not engaging the town, the business owners and the residents of what they feel is the best thing to do for that street. And I guess what was the, all right, no, I guess that's it for me right now. But what everybody else has said have been great points. And I think it's something that you're gonna have to take into consideration for Beach, because that's gonna cause a big issue.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And, it's not only tonight and November 18, but if there are comments that come in, continuously, whether that's emails or phone calls, we can certainly collect those and file those as part of the project to make sure that we do have that feedback leading into the November 18 date. So Alpha Santos is our project manager, and she'll be certainly welcoming of emails and phone calls on that matter.
Realized there was a meeting until our employees told us today that she happened to read it in the paper or something. So we scrambled and tried to get here because obviously we love Laguna. We want to be here. The whole thing. But if we hadn't been able to be here, we wouldn't have even known this was happening to Ocean or, the whole downtown area. So anything that you guys can do to communicate, just even getting your emails or putting a flyer in the mail and just saying, hey, this is happening, and giving us even a few days notice so we can kind of prepare and plan our life accordingly, that would be so great. So we appreciate it.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, it was in your newsletter. It was in the newsletter, which is great, but it wasn't on the calendar. If it would have been on the calendar, I think a lot more people would have seen it. This meeting was not on the calendar. I think that was just a miss.
We appreciate that. We'll make note of that for future actions and meetings.
Hi, I have a couple comments and hope that you'll include this in your future thinking. So I love the trees for shade and beauty. However, we want to make sure that the height of the trees does not cover any signage of the storefronts. We want to make sure that people will still be able to see all the signage for the storefronts so that they can find the businesses that they're looking for. Also, I hope that you will include the infrastructure for any lighting on the street. We want to make sure that the street is safe year-round for pedestrians. We did have an incident recently that was on Ocean, so we want to make sure that everybody feels safe walking in when it gets darker earlier. So we want to make sure that infrastructure is included, or that it is planned for the future, that additional lighting for that street can be put in. So I think that was my main 2 comments. Lighting, and of course, we want to make sure that we can see the signage. And then there are some opportunities for more public art on that street to bring more tourists down that street. And hopefully you'll take advantage of those.
Thank you.
I agree with lighting. Especially in the winter, closing the store at 6, and we have mostly women working there. It's when you're walking up, like we're at 311 Ocean, but you're walking to upper, towards City Hall. It is so dark, and that back parking lot. I run to my car often, and I know we live in a pretty safe town, but maybe a little bit of chicken. But it's something that lighting, especially the upper Ocean part, it is really dark. And everything's closed because it's more, commercial street.
Yeah, and the downtown action plan did spell out as, lighting improvements as one of those action items. So we'll certainly be taking a look at that as we develop the designs.
If I could ask, if you guys don't mind indulging me, but we will be providing a verbal update on November 18th to the council about this meeting. Would you mind giving me a show of hands who is not in favor of the downtown? I think I know my answer, but I'm sorry, the one way on Ocean. Yeah, not in favor of the one way. So it's, yeah, okay, thank you.
So could you just like remind us of what the next steps are? So you're going to take our feedback into consideration. You're going to repackage this. Because I was here, I forget if it was last month or the month before, where the initial discussion of this was presented. If you could just go over the timeline, just so everybody has it in their mind here today, so we feel like our voices have been heard, of like what the next steps are. My question is November 18th the last, like the decision of everything's going to be made at that point? Yes or no on that? And then also in future references, I know it's difficult, but if the project manager can't make the town hall on a project that they're leading, then we should be moving the town hall so they can be here for that, because it's I understand people get sick, things come up, but then just move it. Because if the person who's leading the project's not here, then this shouldn't be happening. That's just my opinion, sorry.
Regarding schedule, so the November 18 meeting is really geared toward that Lower Ocean one-way. So that will be the decision made on that element by City Council to provide that direction. Regarding future designing of the Ocean Avenue corridor, we'll then be moving forward into the preliminary designs. Ultimately, that does go to Planning Commission for that design review approval. So again, feedback will be received at that meeting, some additional direction from Planning Commission as well. That time frame is probably looking more like spring or so for that, with construction bidding probably in the summer, and then gearing toward possible end of the year construction. But again, to kind of be determined. I know we're still in the early stages, so we'll certainly consider all factors as we head into the construction phases. But that's kind of the next 3 or 4 steps moving forward. Any other questions?
Just for comments for the decomposed granite versus the tree wells, I like the plan that you have where some was a little bit of each. I just wanted to say.
Thank you.
Well, I invite you to consider the brown mulch-like rubberized surface that was put in front of the hotel. It seems like that addresses all the concerns. It's flexible. It looks like mulch, but it isn't. It's more secure to walk on. It's a little spongy, so it gives you a little warning that you're not on the sidewalk. And it doesn't impede the tree trunks. It can easily be cut away from the tree trunks. And it's not that expensive as having tree grates everywhere. I think tree grates could be a little bit too formal for Laguna Beach,
Thank you.
especially because we can't use them everywhere. It'd just be kind of like, why did you do this?
I'll get it to you right afterwards. Well, if no further questions, we really appreciate everyone coming out here tonight. We appreciate your input. I know Evan and Tom have taken quite a few notes here as well. So we'll certainly keep that all in mind as we move forward and take the next steps for this project. So thank you, everyone.
Just to quickly build off of that, what we'll try to do is put some notes, some meeting notes, and post those on the project webpage. And so some of the input we receive, some, like I said, is good input. And it's noted. Others will provide responses. We'll check that.
I was trying to look at my phone, so it started skipping under.
Okay.
It was just this one. Okay.